Hey, how's it going? Horror is a packed video game genre. Think of 5 horror games that you enjoy. If I had to guess, they'd all be pretty different from each other. You have psychological, action, survival, maybe with some overlap. Now, what is it to you that makes these games scary? What makes them horror games? I doubt any of you have Space Invaders on that list, but think about it, right? It simulates a alien invasion while it's happening, and it's up to you to hold back those forces. Solid reasoning, but I don't think this gameplay is going to have me shitting my pants like the first time I saw Hereditary. Fun fact, when me and my wife went to go see Hereditary in theaters, her exercise watch told her to slow down because her heart was beating so fast. But there's nothing inherently scary about Space Invaders. Outside of the alien invasion plot, you're just shooting little guys pixel by pixel until the board is emptied. It's not a hard concept or a hard game really, but is that what makes a horror game scary? Is difficulty part of something that makes horror games? Or can you have something be scary and easy at the same time? Alright, we're done with the knife bit. I think it was making some noise. In the early days of horror video games, the technology was limited. Music was simple, cutscenes were bare if there at all, and devs had to get creative with what set the mood for spooking. Most of a horror game's lore and world building came from the manual or the box art itself. But in 1982, we got Haunted House, a game now hailed as one of the earliest survival horror games. It was simple in nature. You stumbled around in the dark, represented as a pair of eyes looking for pieces of an urn. But in looking at footage of this game, goddamn does it do a good job building tension. Look at this motherfucker go! I'm actually shaking and crying right now. It'd be a while before the survival horror subgenre actually gained traction, but when it did, boy did we get a renaissance. Games like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Dino Crisis, Illbleed, System Shock 2, God, there's too many to name. And really, please find a way to play these games, because if these weren't on your list, they're worth your time. But Gwen, you might be asking, I thought this was a video about difficulty in horror games. Okay. Fair, but the grown-ups are talking right now. Be good for mommy for like 10 minutes, and we can stop for ice cream on the way home. I'm getting there. Silent Hill, while notable in the horror community for many reasons, is also worth looking at when discussing difficulty. Silent Hill excels as a horror title by way of atmosphere. It's got ambient music, gore, it's got fear of the unknown of what is in the fog. And while it's considered a classic masterpiece, it's not without its flaws. For example, look at the combat. As a survival horror game, part of Silent Hill's driving horror is to survive, hence the name survival horror. Resources are limited and determine whether you should fight or run away. You do receive resources, which does imply that you do have to fight something eventually. But when you do, you're almost punished. Basic enemies hit hard, and you hit significantly less hard. Like, so much less hard than they do. Even with an actual gun. Even the puzzles are wild. You have to have a degree in chemical engineering to make a cool potion, to pour on a wizard's hand to make it melt, to grab a rock to take it to a tower. However, this jank is somewhat justified. In the story, you play as Harry, who spends the game looking for his daughter after a car accident. Harry's a little different than most horror game protags. He's not in the military or special forces or anything like that. He's literally just a dude. Probably plays in a fantasy league, majored in business, and definitely doesn't know what the fuck is going on. Of course he couldn't excel in combat. However, because of this jank, the difficulty selection, vague as it is more of a frustration measurement, ranging from I'm on a Silent Hill sightseeing tour to are you fucking kidding me? That one-shots me? Silent Hill 2, however, gives you 2 separate options. One for combat and one for your puzzles. This means you can still have a scenic tour of Silent Hill with the combat and delegate all of your brain power into the puzzles. You might need to do a bit more backtracking for the puzzles, but you're not going to die every time you leave the room. Hold up! Uno reverse. What if we tried hard combat and easy puzzles? Listen, it's still a survival horror game, and all the jank from Silent Hill 1 is still there. But if you have to do something on hard, at least the puzzles won't make you backtrack as much, and maybe you can get through the game quicker. I think tailoring the game's difficulty with such individual categories is a great idea. It means the player gets to choose what kind of experience they'll have without altering the core of the gameplay. It's still survival horror. Another game that bends my friggin' bean is 2008's Left 4 Dead. Though it was a multiplayer game with difficulty selections, these only affected the health pool and damage output. Valve as a company said, you know what, let's hire this guy. This is what I'm choosing to interpret as the director. You see, the director was a silly little AI that they had made for the game, who plays with all of his funny little numbers and determines lots of little aspects as you play. Zombies that spawn, the hordes, the items and weapons you found, and even the music at times. In the case of Left 4 Dead 2, the director even got to influence pathways you would take through a level. And not only did these influence the replayability of these levels and campaigns, these seemingly random events kept the replayability high, the scares unpredictable, and me on the edge of my seat begging for a health kit. Like right now, please, please! Plus, calling this algorithm the director fit in with the game's theme of each campaign being a blockbuster movie. The more you know. I throw these examples out there as both ways that difficulty can help and hinder an experience. I mean, have you ever been playing a horror game and it pulls you in with its story and its setting and maybe even creature design, just to get to that one frustrating part of the game that isn't scary anymore? You're just annoyed and you want this segment to end. Yeah, that's not fun or scary. There's a difference between these risk and reward systems that these developers put in place and a game just being hard or punishing. I understand that if the difficulty is too low, that there's no risk. You miss out on that rewarding feeling and you're just going through the motions. But if you make the difficulty too high, you might become so frustrated that that encounter loses its purpose entirely. Let's look at Five Nights at Freddy's. Sure, the first couple of nights and getting acclimated to the game might be fun and exciting, but when you're on night 5 and you just keep losing, are you scared anymore? You've seen the same jump scare over and over and over, and at this point, I just want to close the game. And whether a horror game is too easy or too hard, your immersion's broken. On the topic of risk and punishment, sometimes that punishment could act as a reward. Dead Space is a practical example of this. Yeah, I died, but look how handcrafted and unique this death scene is. This might be the only time in the game that you can see this, and that makes you getting this death scene special. That makes this death less frustrating and kind of its own payoff. That punishment can be fun. I'm not saying make games easier. I think what they really need is more unpredictability. One famous horror title, trailer, teaser, and I'll be done talking Silent Hill after this. PT. It's virtually a walking simulator. You're walking through different segments of endless hallway and a bathroom. Sure, there is a fail state. You can die, but in the many times I played the game, teaser, trailer, I maybe saw this fail state once, but that never took the pressure off. The horror was still there. The game constantly throws new little things that you notice at you, and the sound design doesn't help. And I knew that Lisa was always watching. That alone was enough for me to need a change of pants. Twice. And all that to say that it wasn't a hard experience. It's easy. It is walking, but it was still terrifying. Let's look at something a little bit more unconventional on the topic of horror. A game that could class itself as a survival horror, but prides itself in its difficulty. You might know who I'm talking about. Bloodborne is scary in its atmosphere, its tone, its music, its creature design, but the scares aren't in its difficulty. When I play Bloodborne, I don't say, "Oh no, Mr. Boss, please don't kill me." That's not where the horror comes from. I know I'm gonna die. The horror comes from, well, the creature's design, but what happens when I kill it? What am I unleashing on this world that I feel like I'm trying to save? All by destroying this being. I think one good way we could look at horror games is like pyrotechnics, with fire representing the horror. Firecrackers are easy. They're small, they're quick, and they usually come in a pack of 100 because you're gonna need a lot of them to feel anything. This is your too easy category. It was listed as a horror game on Steam. You got through it quickly, and you probably won't remember it in a year. You just lit it, threw it, and it popped. Now, there was some thrill in that, but not much. If we look at the opposite end of the spectrum, let's look at games that are too hard, like Pipe Bomb. Generally, a negative thing overall. I took damage playing with it, either mentally or physically, and my life is worse having experienced it. A horror game that is too hard usually doesn't redeem itself, and by the end, my entire perception of it is ruined. I won't be replaying it, I won't recommend it, and if you say you like this game, I will judge you. I think it's all a balancing act. If we look somewhere between the firecracker and the pipe bomb, we'll find fireworks. Fireworks are perfect. Fireworks are beautiful, just the right amount of fire glowing in beautiful colors before fading into the night sky. This is a horror game with just that right difficulty. It doesn't overstay its welcome, it leaves an impact. Sure, it was fire and the threat was there and the pressure was on, but like the resolution of a good horror game, I overcame the conflict, the terror. I feel accomplished, satisfied, and I'll likely recommend it to people because, like a good fireworks show, a good horror game sticks with you. Anyway, I want to thank you for watching this video, making it to the end if you did. If you liked it, obviously drop a like, subscribe. I plan on doing more projects like this in the future. I've got a lot of topics in the pipeline that I want to talk about. I'll be live over on Twitch every day of October. Maybe pop in there, argue with me, tell me why this video sucked or why my opinion on some of these games wasn't the best. And sound off in the comments with horror games you think do difficulty just right, maybe toe the line a bit, or horror games that you think flop and don't do that well at all. Anyways, time to go edit my first video, and I'll see you next time. Later!